Bacteria.
Yup, that's me. Probably wonder how I got in this situation. Well, it all started when I started using these 8 engineer builds. Before I start explaining as to why engineering doesn't necessarily have bad ammo efficiency, I'll keep it short and first ask that you subscribe since this took me a while to create. Anyways, let's start playing the sandbox footage so that I can explain this. Engineer only seems to have bad ammo efficiency because it enables you to magnum at a quick rate. However, people tend to forget how much of your kills and ammo actually goes into your sentries as seen in this comparison video between using no sentries and no turret whip compared to using sentries with turret whip. Even if you're not using turret whip, a lot of small enemies such as xenocides and swarmers get dealt with by your turrets instead of you chucking out your SSGs. I've noticed that a lot of people have been joining DRG lately. I joined during the time Zanny created his first deep route video, and I have put in at least 500 hours of the game by now, to the point where I have all weapon PCs. So in order to help greenbeards who just so happen to watch this video not struggle as much as I did, I'll be giving a build setup with the base weapons with no OC. The mods on the Warthog are as follows: 2, 1, anything on tier 3, 2, 1, while on the PGL the mods are 2, 1, 1, 2, 3. A lot of greenbeards have the misconception that your PGL is a single target weapon, while the Warthog is used for crowds, when it is actually the opposite. This is because the PGL has an AoE effect that enables you to shoot from anywhere, unlike the Breach Cutter, where it affects only a straight line. This is why I use the fire mod, because 50% damage decrease does not matter, since the PGL is specifically used to kill normal glyphids, in which in Hazard 5 can kill a large group of glyphids due to heat spreading and the thick damage it causes. Now the gimmick with turret whip mod is that when you shoot your turret, it enables you to shoot out a charged AoE shot, in which it can be used both for crowds and big targets along with stunning them, especially with the dual turret setup. By the time mission control announces that a swarm is coming, you can already finish setting up both turrets. Now the first build with overclocks that I'm showcasing is called Lightweight Explosives. It is a generally used build so you can deal with crowds, big targets, and etc. with moderate amount of damage. The build uses the Lock 1 with the overclock explosive chemical rounds and the Breach Cutter with the lightweight cases overclock. The mods on the Lock 1 are 2, 1, 1, 1, 1, while the mods on the Breach Cutter are 2, 1, 1, 2, 2. Some people tend to call ECR as a non-ammo efficient build, in which to a certain degree I have to agree on. This is because when using the ECR, in my case, I get in the rhythm of constantly locking the tree, and I tend to overuse it. ECR only seems to lose ammo quickly because once again, Engineer allows you to mag dump at a quick rate. Lightweight case is a very underrated overclock because some people forget how much 3 more shots can go a long way in dealing with crowds. I've tested this build on every single mission type, in which the only mission where it suffers a bit is on elimination. The second build I have is called the Volatile Lasso. It is a crowd control build, so it works extremely well on high swarm missions such as on-site refinery, egg hunt, point extraction, escort duty, and mining expedition. The gimmick of this build is that it uses 2 forms of slowdown to get the most out of your secondary and grenades. The build uses the Lock 1 with the overclock Nero Lasso and the Shard Diffractor with the Volatile Impact Reactor overclock. The mods on the Lock 1 are 2, 2, 1, 2, 1, while the mods on the Shard Diffractor are 3, 2, 2, 1, 3. Once again, we have an underrated overclock in this build. People tend to hate or discourage people to use Nero Lasso. However, they tend to forget how useful and long the slowdown is. By the time the lock-on ends, your team would have hit the weak point of the enemies or even killed them. The reason as to why I didn't pick the faster lock acquisition is because it enables you to apply sound on a group of enemies rather than only grouping up a couple of glyphids. Now I'm sure most of you who are watching this video is at least aware of the Volatile Impact Reactor overclock, because most of us see it as the throwing laser. However, it is much more than the throwing laser, but instead a magma beam. With the way I set it up, its purpose is to lay hot magma on the floor on the oncoming glyphids to light them up on fire, as well as leaving them in a damaging AoE. By applying slowdown, this makes it so that the glyphids will stay in the magma for much longer, making it easy for us to ignite them. The next build I wouldn't even consider as a build, but instead a playstyle. And it's called the Mad Engineer. This build was inspired from Knife 32's video. This build has all forms of damage that you would want, both in terms of crowd control and single target damage. This build uses the Warthog with the Cycle Overload overclock and the PGL with the Fat Void overclock. The mods on the Warthog are 2, 1, 1, 2, 2, while the mods on the PGL are 2, 1, 3, 2, 2. Although I would normally put this build in general use, the main discrepancy that tells me otherwise is the fact that it has zero amount of ammo efficiency. You only have 3 shots on the PGL and only a couple of high damage bursts on the Warthog. When using this build, you should put yourself in the mindset that everything that enters your line of sight will be dead immediately. Sadly, this mindset is too effective to the point where the amount of team killing you will be doing will deter you from using this damn build. Trust me, God damn it, I would know. This build works wonders against the Caretaker because 2-3 shots with Fat Boy can destroy the armor and has 5, along with the high DPS on the eye with Cycle Overload. If you ever do kill somebody, please for the love of God say sorry at least. I don't want people to kill one another because it's quote unquote funny. The only time it ever is fun is when it is by accident. Now on to our first single target build. I call this one Hyper Shells, and for a good reason too. The build incentivizes you to hit weak points due to 2 overclocks that we'll be using. And those overclocks are Mini Shells on the Warthog and Hyper Propellant on the PGL. The mods on the Warthog are 1, 2, anything on tier 3, 2, 2, and as for the PGL, the mods are 2, 1, 1, 1, 2. With the way I set up the build, your Warthog does flat 60 damage as long as the reticle is directly covering the target, enabling you to 2-shot Glyphids on Hazard 5. All enemies on Hazard 5 have a 1.2 times damage resistance, so this makes normal Glyphids HP 108. Meaning that when you're shooting twice, you deal 120 damage, and the same effect happens when you hit a 2x weak point, such as the normal Glyphid's head. Now for the main reason as to why I call this build Hyper Shells is the fact that both of your weapons are treated like railguns. And this is especially true with the Hyper Propellant overclock. Your secondary destroys any enemy that decides to expose their weak point. Some people will be deterred to use the fire mod due to the 50% damage reduction, but at the moment the mod is broken so it only changes to incendiary damage, essentially enabling you to vaporize them with full damage along with setting them on fire. That and the armor breaking mod is broken, making you lose direct damage. The Homebrew Explosive mod is a must-have on this build, considering that on average you will get 110% damage bonus, turning your 445 damage up to 934.5 and all the way up to 1068 with the 140 damage boost. This isn't even considering the fact that weak points on most enemies have a 2x damage multiplier. Oh, and similar to the Mad Engineer build, this build still shreds the rivals, especially with one-shotting the patrol bots. Now on to our 4th general use build in terms of technicalities if we consider the Mad Engineer and the base Engi builds. This build setup teaches you that maybe the thousands of hours of rocket jumping in TF2 finally paid off. The build uses the Warthog again because I firmly believe that people discredit it way too much compared to the Lock 1 or the Stubby. This build uses a Cycle Overload overclock again because it essentially feels like you're using the auto shotgun in Doom. That and it fits the aesthetic of the Cowboy. Now as for our secondary, we use the PGL with the RJ250 because I swear people treat the base weapons as if it were training wheels when I know for a fact that that is simply not the case. The mods I use on the Cycle Overload is still the same mods as before, and those mods are 2, 1, 1, 2, 2, and as for RJ250 I use 2, 1, 1, 2, 1. Although RJ250 is a balanced overclock, with this build it actually is a clean overclock. Despite the significant damage decrease, with the way you should use this build, it doesn't matter, considering the fact that you still do a 75 area damage effect, making all the Glyphids die to fire due to heat spreading. That, and this is the only overclock that gives you 21 rounds on the PGL, even beating the compact rounds overclock giving you 18 rounds with both ammo mods. However, in the end, you're not using RJ250 for these benefits. You're using it because you can fucking rocket jump, essentially turning yourself into a breakneck scout. I already explained the benefits and power of cycle overload, but to put it simply, treat it like an actual shotgun. So when using this overclock, you should be as close as possible to the enemy to do your maximum damage, which is 324 if you can successfully hit the target with all your pellets on full auto. Now on to our second crowd control build, in which I couldn't find a better name to call it but EM Death. This build finally uses the stubby with the EM Refire Booster Overclock along with the Spinning Death Overclock on the Breach Cutter. The mods on the stubby are the following: 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, while on the Breach Cutter the mods are 1, 1, 1, 2, 2. This build will shock you, pun intended, with how effective it is against the crowds and the fact that it gives you the ability of having a temporary safe zone. The only requirement that you need when using this build is the Born Ready perk because you only have one shot on the Breach Cutter. With how I set up this build, it rewards you for knowing when and where you should place your blender of a laser. It does enough damage to kill an entire group of Clippids along with stopping them completely. This makes it the perfect tool to use when reviving a fellow dwarf, making it impossible for melee enemies to hurt you, including the Praetorian as seen in the footage. EM Refire Booster is an overclock that I'm sure most people of my level know and love. It is essentially a clean overclock because the only real downside is the increase in spread. But even then, it isn't that significant. With how I set it up, you are almost guaranteed to constantly electrocute the target you are facing with the 50% chance of electrocution, along with the 15 fire rate. That and the fact that you have a 25% chance to arc electrocution onto another Glyphid, along with having the same effect of IFGs, giving a 30% damage vulnerability. Now on to our last build, which fits into the single target category with some exceptions. This build uses the Warthog, but it emphasizes on how powerful Third Whip can be, along with the underrated Breach Cutter overclock. The overclocks used for both of these weapons are lightweight magazines and high voltage crossover, with the mods on the Warthog being 1, 2, 3, 2, 1 and 2, 1, 1, 2, 2 on the Breach Cutter. This build does wonders against bosses, especially against Dreadnoughts. People think that Third Whip is exclusively used on crowds, when in fact it can perform just as well with priority targets such as Praetorians, considering the fact that it has a 50% chance of stun and 50% armor break per charge shot, which, with the Gemini system, becomes 100%. When shooting both turrets at a single target, they do 320 damage combined. However, if you ever run out of ammo on your sentries, or if there is an enemy right on your face, you can still use the shotgun normally. This can be seen on the following sandbox footage. Through this build, I learned that sometimes simplicity is all that you need on a build. Basic Warthog and Breach Cutter is how this build is set up, and yet it works wonders despite having no unstable overclocks. That, and people forget how much electrocution damage and slowdown can go a long way. This build still functions well in normal missions. Well, that's it for this video, and this time I actually put a lot of effort in it, especially because I have to juggle my IRL responsibilities along with working on this. In total, this took me around 2 months to create. If you're still here, I'd really appreciate that you subscribe, because I'm so close to getting the content creator role on Discord and Reddit. That, and you will expect some hopefully quality content such as this along with my normal goofy uploads. Anyways, this is Ballistic signing off. Until next week, I'll see you guys again. Rock and stone.